Everyone. Welcome to the third day on how to face inner storms and who is facing these inner storms. We would be looking at it from the understanding of law of nature today and wanted to share this beautiful Albert Einstein quote, "Look deep into nature and then you will understand everything better." And we are going to be looking at the law of karma. Law of karma and law of nature is the same thing. And the deeper understanding of it helps us get the deeper understanding of the inner storms and how our internal world is connected with the outer world. So let's take a moment and connect again with who the real self is. So, in this moment, take this moment of silence and in this silence, allow the noises of the world to stay out. And bring the attention to who is the true self. The true self is the sparkling star, the eternal lamp, the true self is innately full. Innately has higher nature. He belongs to a world that is incorporeal, a bodiless being of light. His home is incorporeal, father is incorporeal, and his whole family of little tiny sparkling brother stars is also incorporeal. And that is this truth of him forever. It does not change just because he comes to play a part in this little toy drama down below. Because he has forgotten who he is. It causes upheavals and inner storms. The being of light and nature are friends. And nature wants the invisible traveler to experience the best. Nature wants to offer the best. But there are certain laws of nature. Laws of karma. Just like law of gravity. And these laws are always there. Law of gravity existed even before Newton discovered it. And similarly, laws of karma are there, whether one is aware or not. These laws are there to protect, to cooperate, to preserve the highest purity. Yes, there is free will. But if that free will is used from the space of ignorance, attachments, desires, then one can use the free will to hurt the self and hurt others. And nature says, this is not clever. Tomorrow you can choose to sit on fire. And that's okay, it's free will. But nature says, it can hurt you. So nature cannot communicate with words. So nature uses the message of pain or message of comfort. Message of pain helps the one to become aware and take care of that pain. And it rewards with comfort when the free will is used from the space of absolute truth of the soul. So this is not really meditation. This is remembering again who the real self is. It's not a meditation just to feel good for 10 minutes and then back to ordinary life. This meditation, or rather remembrance of the true self, trying to remind the self of who the real self is. The real self lives in the home of souls with the power of his mind. So in the mind, the true self creates an environment. The soul creates an environment where the angel thrives and the egos die. In ignorance, ego thrives and angel suffocates. So it's the cleaning process of the mind to reawaken what is truth, what is real. The soul has been playing with these toys in the toy world for a long time now, getting attached to these toys. But it's time to outgrow them. And with the light of knowledge and the power of yoga. The king reawakens. The soul reawakens. Who's naturally free from desires, naturally fearless, naturally a being who's innately of the highest consciousness, naturally in the awareness of being bodiless. And body is a shoe. One needs the shoe to go through the journey comfortably. But one doesn't become the shoe. So the soul is separate, completely separate, not just from the body, but also the personality and the name and the form of the body. So let's keep this awareness of this being of light who's listening and imbibing at the same time. So we know nature has deep intelligence, and there's a complex mechanism that is going on. Whenever there's a cut, we see the first thing that comes is the pain. And then that pain leads to bleeding, and that brings your attention there. And then you take steps to heal it. Otherwise, one can bleed to death. So this complex mechanism takes place to heal, but pain is the first signal. So we know that nature wants to cooperate, wants to preserve, wants to protect the body and the soul. Laws of nature are much more intelligent today than the human soul. If there is wrong posture, then there will be pain, which tells you to correct the posture, and then the body can enjoy the comfort. There are many different types of pain. Emotional pain, physical pain, pain of misfortune. Emotional pain, little bit we are aware of. Physical pain is gross pain, so we are aware of that. Pain of misfortune is the pain that I would like to discuss today, which will take us into the arena of inner storms. So pain of misfortune is the pain soul attracts towards itself from nature in the form of difficult situations. Since nature can't talk, it does communicate through pain or comfort. So we will see how our famous map of the mind, it's something one would say that take a picture and keep it on the wall or in the kitchen or somewhere where you can easily see it, because we are not even aware that we are in wrong posture, and we accept the wrong inner posture as normal and natural. Inner life is sick today. We go through this journey and we give birth to so many eyes, so many different eyes. So what does nature see it as? Nature sees all these little eyes as tumor. And every eye has its own balancing mechanism, a Vinash force. So for example, to understand the wrong inner posture, there was this person who was very clever, very nice person, but there was this one ego or the false identity that he had created was about how clever he is. So whenever he would interact or talk to people, He would always feel as though they are lower than him, and it would come in some kind of form. It would be visible on his face also, and it was there in the mind very much, that he's so much better and cleverer than others. So this person who was sharing this story, they knew this person, and this person was sharing that this person, very rare, he had a malaria in a place like England. And when he had malaria, he had the dementia of the brain. Now he could not come up with clever answers anymore. And because he could not come up with clever answers, he couldn't be cleverer than others. So that little I that created that ego of being cleverer than others, there was a Vinash force or a balancing mechanism that was taking place at the same time. So each time there is an ego, there is a balancing mechanism that nature will create to remove that ego. And that is why it had to be removed. So it was removed in this way. So now he could not be cleverer than others. There will be another example that would like to give. This person said that they really, really liked coffee, and there was nothing that can stop them from drinking coffee. Now, their argument was it's very good and it's harmless, but it was their addiction speaking. So some years down the line, what happened was that they started getting headaches because of the coffee. And so what they thought was maybe they can go to another coffee shop. And from there, they can get that coffee that will maybe help. And it did help for a short while. But soon after, they started getting palpitations. And they had to really cut down the amount of coffee they were drinking. And as a result, what was happening, there came a point that even the thought of the coffee was giving them palpitations. Now, it's like a very small demonstration of how, if you do not do it yourself, if you do not overcome the addiction yourself, it will be done for you. And it will be done by force for you, because nature is seeing that addiction as a disease, as an illness. So there will be a situation or a disease or illness, your body will become intolerant to it because the body is being abused. That is not the reason nature gave the body, to please your senses. Nature gave the body for a very specific reason. Nature gave the body to be used according to the laws of nature. And then what happened was, it's like when you are forced to give up any attachment, any desire, any ego, the soul does not gather power. Soul becomes weaker. But when the ego is eradicated and removed with wisdom, then the soul gains power. And the power increases to remove other egos. Because sooner or later, they will be forced to be removed. One does not have a choice. So nature's point of view is ego is illness. And so there will be a balancing mechanism coming to change that. So there are lots of other, coffee was just a very simple, small example. There can be many other examples. And there was this husband and wife. The wife was very proud of her husband. And the wife thought, my husband takes such good care of me. And it was like, there was a pride in seeing others' husbands not doing that. She would feel better about her husband because of that false identity, thinking I am a wife, I'm a woman, I have a husband. That all is ego identities. It's creating a Vinash force. And then what happened after 18 to 19 years of marriage? Guess what happened? Those who were so close to each other, husbands started having an extramarital affair. And that is why it goes to show that every attachment we have is getting to create another Vinash force with it. And these Vinash forces go with us in our next life as well. And so it's very important to understand egos from the place of perfection, from the place of one's innate nature. And that is why if you do not make the change, change will be forced upon you. And we know if there's any discomfort, inner storm, the posture is not correct. And so we either learn through pain or through wisdom. And nature says just because you don't understand the law and you're ignorant of the law's depth does not excuse you from creating these egos and polluting your mind and polluting other minds and polluting the whole environment. That is a karma one is creating by creating pollution here first, then polluting others' minds, and then polluting the whole world as a result. And so one has to get back to one's original state of mind. One has to bring the mind back to health. And so I will share this very beautiful story and really like the story personally a lot because there is a very clear message that is very clearly given in the story, and would like to read it in the words of the person itself. Her name is Christina Figueres. She's a former executive secretary of the United Nations on climate change, and she was meeting one of our she was meeting the European director of Brahma Kumaris, whose name is Sister Jayanti. She's a very, she's our senior sister. And in the words of this soul here behind Christina Figueres, so she said that there was this Paris Agreement, one of the toughest negotiations in the history of Convention on Climate Change between many different countries. And at a very critical point in the negotiations, everything came to a full stop. And the reason for it was there was a dynamics of victim and perpetrator between the countries. Then she could not figure it out for some time. So there was an aha moment in her meditation class where she said that the answer came loud and clear when I saw myself playing a role of a victim in my marriage, and I am in my thought and in my world accusing my husband of victimizing me. It was very interesting that I'm living into that dynamics and I'm carrying my dynamics with me to my work. My internal reality is with me. So any egos that we are creating are with us all the time. I realized I'm taking that internal reality of victim perpetrator that I'm fertilizing through my awareness, thinking, suffering, and tears into my day job. Not intentionally, but quite effectively, and spilling it all over the negotiations. I had to take an observer stance and realized my responsibility here is to extract myself from the victim role and stop accusing the other of being a perpetrator. And as she started doing this cleaning process within of this ego, she said there were fewer tomatoes that were being thrown. And today the issue is resolved. She said, we tend to think my inner reality is completely separate from the external, but our corrupted inner world is like a heavy backpack. We take it with us and dump on whatever we work on, whomever we are with. And so you start seeing that you have the power and the powerful lever, and no one else has it. You have the control on it. And that is what we are learning here, that it is a powerful situation to know and to recognize these egos within the self. Because once you recognize them from a very powerful place as an observer who's like God, an observer who's innately joyous, an observer who's not identified by these egos, an observer who's filled with wisdom, And that being is observing these egos and finishing them, because nobody's responsible and we can't blame external situations for our internal state. As we have seen, it is what the soul is carrying here, is what the soul is inviting from outside. So it puts the soul in a very powerful position. Why powerful? Because now the control is in the hands of the one who is creating its outer world by its inner world. So if the soul changes the inner world, the inner environment of the mind, it can change the external situations. But whether external situations change or not, what can happen is the soul will have the power to not fluctuate and hold on to its eternal truth, no matter what the external situation is, because he knows he's from the world beyond, and this is just a play. And that awareness can be held in every situation. So let us take a moment, and in this moment, we will go into meditation, or rather remembrance. Would not use the word meditation, but use the word remembrance, because remembrance is natural. Remembrance, the mind is remembering every single moment, either something or someone. Meditation sometimes can sound heavy duty. So ask the self, does one behave like a visitor? Ask the self, remember who you are. Law of nature cooperates with those who are stabilized in truth, who have an attitude of a guest, who does not take sorrow, who does not give sorrow. Those who are demanding, nature soon starts to oppose. Naturally, it will start creating a response of creating a balancing mechanism, balancing the soul to come back to its original state. Nature says, take care of yourself and you take care of the whole world. Stay in remembrance of who you are. One is not a wife or a husband or a woman or a man or a cousin. We are sparkling stars, sparkling eternal lamps. Who are foreigners in this world. The culture of this foreign land is not the culture of the home of the invisible being. The culture here is of change. The culture here, and it's a beautiful culture. Story would not be interesting if it's predictable. Sorry, unpredictable. And so, he comes from a world where everything is beyond change. And he remembers that as he remembers himself, that he is beyond change. He has to preserve his original state. So when change happens around him, he knows that's the nature and the culture of the physical world. part of the story world. When story becomes small and insignificant, ego begins to die. But when one makes story world big, ego thrives in it. So when asleep soul cooperates with egos, one is cooperating with the enemy. So use non-cooperation. It gives chance to the soul to become conscious. This is the state we need to come back to. But by making that the starting position, all souls are worthy in God's eyes. They may be carrying different egos under illusion, but the one who's here will not see those egos in the other. The one who's stabilized here will see others here as well, in their purest state. So homework has to be done to detach. This is step number 1, to detach even from the part one is playing. That is probably the first step. This is the seed and the root of all attachments, is attachment to the name, to the personality and the character of the body. Any threat to the reputation of Susan, Rini, Harry, any threat prevents the soul from loving unconditionally. Attachment to this character. So if the soul is detached from Rini, if somebody likes Rini, somebody dislikes Rini, it doesn't bother the soul. The soul is free to love the other. The soul is unconditionally available always because it has no attachment to this Rini character in the story. But if there's even slight bit of attachment to Rini, then whoever insults Rini, soul will find it very hard to love them because it's caught up in this character. So detach from the character. It unleashes infinite capacity of the soul, just like God. And for that, the soul needs the company of the Supreme, who's forever in this state of clarity, who's forever in the state of benevolence, unconditional love. And when the soul is in this company, he too is detached from this lifeless doll, because the life is in the soul. Life is not in this doll show or the doll. So let's hold this awareness of being this being of light, who's a bundle of joy, bundle of bliss, who needs nothing from this toy world and can see the egos in its own mind with detachment. So he's free, free to love, free to be in bliss. So let's see for next 24 hours, if we can hold this awareness, the soul can hold this awareness, because weak sometimes can be confusing when we start thinking it's Rini. No, but it's the soul who is holding the awareness of being a blissful being who needs nothing from the story world. And if ego pops up of wanting something, look at the absurdity, remind the self of the infinite treasures one has, and let go. It may fight back, but don't believe it. Just hold on to your truth. For next 24 hours, detach from this body, the name, and the egos in the mind. Om Shanti.